get us started. We've got a really full agenda. So really, as I said, really glad to have you with us. Not quite sure what some of you seasoned advocates are doing here, but we can use your wisdom as well. So I'm Elizabeth Dickinson. I am the partnership coordinator for the Western sort of quarter of the state, maybe. And I'm co-leading with Jeff DeBray. Give you a chance to introduce yourself, Jeff.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Co-leading, mostly I'm just talking a little bit here and there. So Elizabeth has put a lot of work into this. Yeah, Jeff DeBray, he, him pronouns. I've been supporting FAN's work in Eastern Washington. And I'm actually transitioning out. We'll be with the ACLU. So I may see some of you over in Olympia, either in person, and hope to see you there. But it's been great being a part of this, and what a great way to end it. So I'm looking forward to chatting with all of you more today about some advocacy. I'll pass it back to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks. So our goals for today are to give you some practical tools around advocating, to review some of those. There's going to be a lot of information, so we want you to know now that we'll be sharing the slide deck with you, so you can just listen and not worry about having to take notes or anything. We're going to try to make you aware of the resources that we think will be the most helpful for you in this session ahead, and also give you a chance to either practice messaging or practice articulating some of the values and the stories that are important to you. So those are our major goals. And I'd love for anyone who's from FAN, from the FAN staff, we're all from FAN, to introduce yourselves. Just unmute and.
Hi, Elise Tigoyer, Executive Director of Faith Action Network, and just delighted that Elizabeth took lead on this and that you're all here.
Hi, everyone. Jess Ingman, a FAN regional organizer based in Wenatchee, Washington, so North Central, and excited to be here. Grateful for Elizabeth and Jeff's work.
Hello, I'm Eric Don Anderson in Yakima, regional organizer of the South Central region, and I am excited to be here as well.
Hi, I'm Blake Alford, and I'm the operation coordinator for FAN. Excited to be here.
Thanks, everyone. So as far as what you can see, are you seeing just the panel? I mean, just the slide? Is that good? Okay. So for me, I believe that it is really important to begin with the why of our advocacy. That for me, my experience and my motivation for advocacy for justice is deeply intertwined with my experience of the sacred. And I get a lot of inspiration both from my tradition and from the sacred texts. And I wanted to share, so many of us have sacred texts that speak of justice. So I wanted to share this slide with you. We have from the Quran, stand up firmly for justice as a witness to God. You know, whether it be against rich or poor. We have from the Jewish scriptures, justice, justice thou shalt pursue. I love from the Sikh tradition, uttering brings power, silence brings no power. And then from the Buddhist tradition, that all people possess intrinsic value and that all are endowed with inherent dignity, and that our task is to help realize this dignity. So that's what motivates me. And I think that is part of our power as advocates, is this very clear grounding in values, and for us as people of faith and people of conscience. So Nancy Amadei, advocate extraordinaire, says, you know, experts can be hired, but real people with real stories cannot. And we are the real people with the real stories. Not to say anything bad about Trevor, our lobbyist, but he's our volunteer lobbyist. So this is really where our power is. We know that 10 to 15 calls or letters is enough to get the attention of a legislator. When we think of our fan network spread across the state, we know that we can get 10 or 15 calls or letters going. We also know that the typical budget year has more than 2,000 bills introduced, and about 5% of those pass. So our drawing attention to those bills really makes a difference, those bills that we want. So just some general information, which probably most of you know. Washington has 49 legislative districts, each of which elects a senator and 2 representatives. They meet in session each year in the spring to create laws and change existing ones. There are short sessions, what our Kristen calls the espresso session, and those are in the even numbered years, and we are in an odd numbered year, which means that we are also, this is a budget year, creating the biennial budget. So we have multiple opportunities and entry points for advocacy. Fan, Kristen in particular, has, but a number of us have been active in coalitions as fan staff, where we have been crafting ideas in collaboration with legislators, such as the Working Families Tax Credit, certainly the idea for providing resettlement money for refugees and immigrants came out of faith communities. We have a chance to impact at the point when a bill gets to a policy committee or a fiscal committee. And then again, when it goes to the rules committee, which is the sort of the final rite of passage before a bill goes and is discussed at the full House, full Senate level. And we can also impact when the bill goes to the governor. So lots of opportunities for us to raise our voices when a bill is in committee or on the floor. So you're ready to get started. What do you need? There are 2 really great resources I'm going to be referring to over and over again in this presentation. So I wanted, first of all, to make sure that you can see what it looks like when you go to the Faith Action Network advocacy page. And this is our advocacy toolkit, which is part of the that page. I hope you get a chance to really explore it. There's information in each of these sections. the Learn the Basics, the Mobilize Communities. The other resource that is really great to have at your fingertips is the Legislative Information Center that is put together by the Washington legislature. And that is this ledge.wa.gov. So those two resources are going to carry you through this advocacy session. Pretty much any question you have, you're going to be able to find the answer here. But of course, FAN staff are happy to answer as well. So this is just just wanted to give you a sense of some of the things you can find in the advocacy toolkit, how to find your district, tips for meeting with legislators, so many things. So know that you can get back to this. And also then there's, this is how you would get to the Legislative Information Center. You'd go to this website, ledge.wa.gov. Just go to the drop-down menu and you can see second to the bottom, the Legislative Information Center. Got so much information, step-by-step instructions. So that's pretty much what you need to know. We could almost stop now, but those are the basics. And the Legislative Information Center also has got videos. So just about sort of everything you need. So just to walk you through a basic step-by-step process, just so it feels comfortable to you. The first thing that I would suggest is that you identify and learn about your legislators. You can make sure that you know which district you're in, and that's important because there has been some redistricting that has happened. So you want to make sure that your information is current and who represents you. The two resources that I just pointed out to you are where you can get information about finding your district and your legislator. You might also find it really helpful to go to the legislative pages that are that describe your legislators. That's in the legislative website. You can find there a short biography of your legislator, a list of committees that they're on, and bills that they're sponsoring. That's really helpful so that you know what they're interested in. You can maybe craft your messages to meet their interests. And I guess at this point, I would just say also that I think it's really important that you not rule out contacting any one of your legislators. When I've done advocacy work with my church, sometimes people have said, oh, I don't need to write to so-and-so. They always vote the way I want them to. But it's really important for them to know that we support them, and our letters, our calls can give them stories that they need, and also help them be able to say to their colleagues, look, I'm getting a lot of mail about this. So it's an important way that we can support and show our gratitude by connecting with those legislators who are supportive. So then you get a chance to learn about the bills that matter to you. So there's been, FAN folks have been doing a lot of work on our priority areas of advocacy. It's an exciting session. We've got some really great opportunities to make a difference for people in our state and for the creatures and world. And so you can find the priority areas and the priority policies also in the advocacy section on our website. So there's a whole list of the bills. We just want to say that there's an annotated version and a straightforward 2-page version. These are the major areas that and values that matter to us, and we hope to you, that we try to use and look through a lens of racial equity for all of our areas. So promoting economic justice, expanding the social safety net, reforming the criminal justice system, and so on. You can read. If advocacy is new for you, or if you're just like not a superhuman, you might want to choose 1 or 2 issues or 1 or 2 bills to focus on for the legislative session. It can be completely overwhelming to follow our whole agenda, but we do provide a menu of policies that then and bills to work on, so that we hope that you will find a connection with what your values are. And I would say also this is true for if you're trying to organize within your faith community, that you would that you might want to pick something that in which you are already engaged in some kind of direct service, or to which you have a commitment already. So anything else? Let's see. So hopefully you're already on our signed up with FAN, so that you'll get our weekly emails during the legislative session, which will give you up-to-date opportunities to advocate. You can also just go to the website and follow our bill tracker. If you've chosen a couple bills, you can follow along in what's happening, and we will try to be updating those, I believe, every Friday. But Elise, you can correct me later later on around what day of the week. So ways to advocate. Anila, I know you're on. Here's Anila advocating. Couple rest of you too. So I think about this as sort of a menu of options, and you can do what feels comfortable. So you can advocate in person or by Zoom. You can advocate online, by phone, and also we have voices that we can use through the media. That's really important. And I'm going to briefly look at the first 3 of these, just to give you a sense, but we don't have time really for the persuasion via media part. So just want to say again that in this Legislative Information Center, right here, look at this, just a step-by-step. Here's how you do each thing. So this is such a handy reference that the Washington legislature offers us. So first, in person or by Zoom, the most important thing, the most important date is to show up at the Interfaith Advocacy Day in Olympia if you can, either by making your own calls from home if it's too far away, or in person. And we have tips for how you can do that. There'll be workshops. We'll be making appointments for you in our district, in your district. Also want to let you know that if you live on the eastern side of the state, you can attend the legislative conference there on January 21st. There'll be a lot of things happening, including advocacy updates from FAN, Earth Ministry, and the Washington Catholic Conference. You, of course, can go on your own to advocate or with other members of a group. And FAN will continue to share other advocacy days as the time goes on. So you may want to, in addition, of course, to going to IFAD, you may want to go to the housing and homelessness or to mental health advocacy days. So many opportunities. You can advocate online. During, as many of you know, during the last 2 legislative sessions, legislators have found that remote advocacy has really increased access to our policymakers for people who work full-time or who live far from the Capitol or who have disabilities or who just feel nervous about showing up in our Capitol at this point. So that will continue. You can email your legislators. There are 2 ways of doing this. Back to the same old ledge.wa.gov spot. You can fill out a form that will go to your legislator, or you could email directly. And the template for that, the way you would do that would be their first name, period, last name at ledge.wa.gov. So for me, it's rebecca.saldana@ledge.wa.gov. You can also submit a comment on the website. And what I would suggest for that is that you go through, again, through the Legislative Information Center. And they actually have a form that you can fill out. And the great thing about that is it is an option to contact all your legislators at once, so within your district. So very easy, grab a cup of coffee, sit down, do that on a Sunday afternoon or something. And you can call. So you can call directly. You can find the phone number on the Washington Legislative website under member info rosters. You can also call on the legislative hotline. One of the great things about that is that you can provide one message to all of your representatives at one time, as well as the governor. And there are, operators on standby who are willing to talk to you and are really helpful, will be able to, help you craft your message if you're having a little trouble with that, or just give you information. There are interpreter services, and it's open 8 to 7 on Monday through Friday. And that is, that's sort of your option, your set of ways that you can advocate for justice, for the things that we matter. And I'm passing it over to you, Jeff. And I will stop sharing so you can share.
Great. Well, I'm just gonna, Elizabeth did a great job of walking us through how to get to the resources we need to advocate. And I'm just going to share briefly, if folks can see my screen, to talk through some advice around messaging. And so you know how to advocate, but let's take some time to actually practice and do it. So we just have a few tips here that we'll walk through. And then at the end of this, we'll spend most of the time in a breakout group, and folks will have an opportunity to practice with one of the bills that's one of our legislative priorities this session. So yeah, stop me, drop some questions in the chat along the way. But the first thing here is just wanted to provide some best practices around creating an effective message. Let's say you're speaking to your legislator, and the biggest thing I like to tell folks around this is to tell your story. And there's really nothing more impactful if you have a personal investment or experience in the policy that you're advocating for, to share that if you're comfortable. And then tell other stories. I think if they're comfortable and have given you the permission to share that as well. Speaking to my family member or my friend had this experience, it demonstrates how it's not just you that's been impacted by this issue, but there's other folks that have had skin in the game, for lack of a better term. Off of that, emphasize your messengers and supporters. So this gives you credibility. If you can say, I have 100 people that signed this document in support of this bill. I had this government agency or this nonprofit that's come out in support of this bill, speaking to like what other groups have been in support of the issue that you're fighting for. Another thing here is like, you don't need to be a policy expert. So I think there's can be a lot of fear around when you're doing advocacy work that I need to know every detail of this policy. If I don't, I'm going to do it wrong. It's much less about like the specific content of what you say and more about like the story you tell and the why that you deliver when you're in the room with the legislator or their staff. Other thing here, demonstrate consistency and repetition. So you want to keep it short and sweet and say over and over again what you are fighting for. So I support HB 1025 and getting specific, like I support free meals for kids in schools. That's one example we'll talk about a little bit later here. Elevate directly impacted communities. So if you have like a coalition you're working with or groups from your church that you could bring in the call with you or into the space with you, that is really powerful. Always end with a call to action to say, I ask you to support or vote against this bill, and make the ask over and over again. You don't want to get caught up in the weeds of the policy as much as you just want to be really clear about where you stand and why you showed up that day. Here's some more specifics, details around resources from FAN, just around developing an effective message. So to get a little more in the weeds on this, you'll start with answering these questions of who are you? So you always want to introduce yourself, other personal relevant information. So who you work for, perhaps, whether you're a constituent, do you live in the district that you're talking to the legislator with? Talk about your issue. Their legislators are dealing with a lot of different issues this session, hundreds of bills. So you don't have to be an expert, but have 1 to 2 quick like sentences. This is the issue that I'm talking about. Then we get into the story piece. So if you're kind of following an agenda, you talk about why you care about this issue. I've been impacted by this. My friends and family have been impacted by this issue. This is why I'm here. How does it affect my life? How does it affect the lives of other people in my district? Then you're going to push it off to them of why they should care about this issue as well. And then, like I said, closing with that call to action and the ask of saying, what specifically do you want them to do about it? So I want you to vote yes. I want you to contact so-and-so. I want you to vote neutral. Whatever your ask is, always end with the ask. So they're very clear about where you stand. And we'll be sending out this deck, like Elizabeth mentioned, so you'll have this as kind of a step-by-step guide. Yeah, I was able to pull this. We were able to pull this from just FAN resources, so I really loved having this as a resource. Other do's and don'ts. So don't endorse candidates when you're up there. That's a compliance thing. Every once in a while, we can run into that. Don't do that. Don't get caught in the weeds of the policy. Don't think you are unqualified. So everyone in this space that showed up today is qualified to do advocacy work. Demonstrate shared interests of like, this is why you should support it. Do share your story. Do share who else supports your message. Do keep it brief. And then know your audience, right? So the way you deliver your message is going to be different to a lawmaker than it would be perhaps to maybe another like advocacy organization who you're trying to get to support. So just be aware of who you're talking to. And your audience could be different of like, depending on which lawmaker you're speaking to, whether it's a moderate Democrat in the Senate or a really conservative Republican, you want to be adjusting that as well. Okay. So with that, we're going to move now into a quick breakout group. That sounds all right, Elizabeth. Want to ground everyone in an example here. So I pulled one issue from the legislative agenda for FAN. This is the free school meals for all students. So this would providing meals as part of the right to education. It's a pathway to end child hunger and relieve financial burdens on families. This is an issue that's being presented in this year's legislative session. And so we're going to have a chance to break out into groups of 3, I believe, or so, and talk through and practice with your group how you would talk to a legislator with this issue. Keeping in mind some of the things we just went over around sharing your story, around making an ask as well. Just guidance on this. Try to keep it to like a minute or 2 per person. I actually don't, you can tell me how much time, our time check here, Elizabeth, but a couple minutes per person, and then we'll bring folks back together. If it's helpful, I'm just going to say like 2 or 3 quick sentences just to model this a little bit. And then we can jump into it. So I might say, good afternoon. My name is Jeff DeBray. I'm here to talk to you today about free school meals for all students in Washington State. I live in Spokane, where I know that this past year, over 300 students had experienced homelessness and poverty in our public school system. And I firmly believe that providing these free meals for kids would radically change their lives. I also have a young niece who is going to be transitioning into the school system soon, and believe that her access, whatever state she lives in, she deserves access to these meals, and regardless of income. So I'm asking you today, as a constituent in the 3rd legislative district in Washington, to support this bill. And I don't remember the bill number, but I would maybe say that if I did. Thank you so much for your time. Now I'm going to pass it off to my friend who's going to share why they're here. So short and sweet, give folks a chance to break into groups, maybe introduce yourself, and give it a shot. Does that make sense to everyone? Anyone have any questions? Okay, I think Elise was gonna break us up.
Yep, here we
Yeah.
go.
And I
12
just want to
rooms.
say that when we come back, we can share for a bit, and we'll be covering testifying and have a chance for Q&A, and Kristen will send us forth. So that's what you can look forward when you get back. Thank you.
And Elizabeth and Jeff, how long do you have for the groups?
Let's see.
Let's come. I don't know. What do you think?
10 minutes?
Great. Yeah.
9 minutes, 3 minutes per person, 9 minutes.
All right, here we go.
So, hi, how was that? Any, maybe take 3 comments. Oh, sorry, Jeff, you've got it under control.
Oh no, you were doing exactly what I was going to do.
Go for it.
Yeah. Anyone have any feedback? Maybe just a couple folks. Keep it short. But what do you think went well? What was challenging in that experience? Anyone want to unmute? Just share for a minute.
Hi, this is Janet. I will say that I thought it was really beneficial for me to actually use my mouth and articulate and stumble my way through it. And also to have reassurance from folks who are veteran advocacy people.
Yeah, sometimes literally being forced to talk that it does it for you, right? Like you're like, oh, this is scary, and then once you do it, it's not as scary. So maybe one or two. If anyone else, two more. If anyone else wants to share something.
Well, I'll go ahead and share. I think I met my new best friend for today. She's absolutely fantastic. And what was interesting was her take was so focused on different things than my take did. And it made me realize that these legislators are going to get different opinions, different backgrounds from everybody that talks to them. And every background is important for them to make what we consider the right decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they don't know what they don't know, right? And you don't know what they don't know. So that's great. Well, thank you all so much for engaging in that. I think I'll have to push us along here because we're getting closer to the end of time, but really appreciate it.
Do you mind saying really quickly, you gave some numbers about how many people it takes to talk to the legislators to move them. Can you give that figure one more time? I think that's what you said.
Oh, I don't know. Did I say,
Was it
how many
you that
people it
said it?
takes?
I did. I
Well,
mean,
Elizabeth did.
that I
Sorry.
had seen 10 to 15.
Okay. That's helpful to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Bob Beekman. I just want to say something important that people, this may be either encouraging or discouraging, but I mean it to be encouraging. People get concerned about how eloquent or well put together their pitch is. That really doesn't matter. You know what matters? That you said something, you raised your voice, and the numbers matter. So, speak from your heart, do the best you can. Don't worry about how eloquent or structured or your speech is. Just be clear about what you're talking about. It always helps to have the bill number, but otherwise it's just raising your voice.
Thank you so much, Robert. That's such a great point. And yeah, so true. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll pass it back to you, Elizabeth. And yeah, thanks everyone for engaging that activity.
Okay. And I just, hopefully I'm in the right spot. Just have a couple. Okay. So want to make sure that when you do this, this can be hard for us, that you treat yourself afterwards, whatever that looks like. So I want to just say a couple things. Maybe testifying, participating in a committee hearing feels like a reach to you all. But I want you to know that that's a possibility, that you can testify orally and you can do it remotely. For those of us who are maybe feeling a little bit like, oh, not so eloquent, there are options to submit written testimony that will go into the legislative record. And that's like 1 or 2 sentences that will go to the committee. So if you're interested in advocating at the beginning, toward the beginning of the process, make sure that it gets out of committee. This is a great thing to do. And we know that we'll have folks who are deeply involved in some of our issues who will be testifying. And one of the things that we can do is to state our position on a bill without testifying. So you can go to the Legislative Information Center and they will tell you how to sign in to a bill, and you can just mark whether you're pro or con. And if we could get, 300 people from across the state of Washington, backing up maybe Kristen's testimony that we want free school meals for everyone, regardless of income, that it's just a right. That would be so powerful. So this is an option that I would want to send you to the Washington State Legislative website, but they will tell you how to do that. And that's a really powerful thing that you can do. We're not going to have time for planning advocacy in your faith community, but that will come with those slides will come with the slide deck. And I think also get added, I hope, to our advocacy toolkit. Okay, last thing, just wanted you to be able to see, since this is a budget year where our state budget money has gone over the last couple of years. And if you want to be talking, there are 3 fiscal committees in the House, including transportation and ways and means and transportation committees in the Senate. And if what you are passionate about is something that has to do with the state budget, like the Housing Trust Fund, you would want to be talking to legislators who are in those committees, as well as your own legislator. You are welcome to contact any legislator you want, not just your own. If you're passionate about something and your legislator is not on a committee, you can just write as a concerned citizen. So wanted to let you know we've got about 5 minutes for Q&A. We threw a lot at you, but any questions anyone has, and then Kristen will close us out.
Elizabeth, on that previous slide, there was a link. Is there somebody that could, I can't, it won't let me copy it. Is there someone that can put that link in the chat?
We can, but I'm also going to send you the slide deck. So you'll have the slides, so you will be able to grab it. But
Okay.
It looks like someone is doing that.
Okay.
Rosemary. And you're muted. Oh, not any, well, yeah.
You're right, I was muted. Yeah, I was just curious to know whether you've ever really concluded on what kind of contact has the most influence on a legislature. For example, I often encourage my congregation just to call that hotline because it's so convenient. And then they, obviously that message goes to the legislator. Do they look at that any more strongly or less strongly than like a direct email to them or other means of communication? Is there any way to judge what means the most to what seems to have the most effect?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. And I would open that up, ask anyone I don't have that answer. And let me model that if a difficult question is asked by your legislator when you're in person, you say, I don't know, and say, I will get that information to you. And then you do that. So I can say that, but hopefully someone else will be able to address that.
Thank you.
My name is Julia Kruger, and I've heard in other situations, and I think this more relates to at the federal level, that an actual handwritten or typed letter in an envelope has a good punch, because it means that somebody really sat down and took the time to do it, and they don't get many of those, so it's a standout. Another way is it would be if you're advocating within a sort of a group within your church, to maybe put together a composite letter and put the church, have have the church send it so that it's got that imprimatur on it.
Thanks, Julia.
Yeah, this is Bob Beekman. I'll make an observation. It sort of goes back to what I said before. A personal letter, as was just suggested, is always very effective. The calls to the legislative hotline are also effective, but what's most effective about that is the number of them. You know, I don't want to discourage people doing this, but the least effective is the kind of email that we may even do this ourselves. We may put up an email that people put their name on and fire it off. That is, it's easy to do, and I don't want to discourage people from doing that, but is probably the least effective.
Elizabeth, if I could respond as well.
Yeah.
You know, certainly showing up is a huge thing. And that's why we are making this time in Olympia for Interfaith Advocacy Day possible. So showing up is in person is the best. You know, I'm not sure about how the written mailed in an envelope mail is being processed in Olympia right now. But certainly that adds a unique piece to it. But I would just say, along with what Bob said, is we will always give you text to think about, you know, to step back, rely on in getting your message across on a bill we care about, and we'll try to make it short and succinct, and because, you know, they're not going to read a long letter. It's simply, you know, you want to be as to the point as possible, but we really, really encourage you to, in that first line, make it your own. I am Julia Kruger, and I am from Wallingford United Methodist, and I care about my neighbors who are homeless, and this is what I see, and that's why I think this bill should be passed. So please write an opening sentence every time we give you some template. That's our intent. I also wanted to say that Beth, I think, has a question about the 3 financial committees in the chat.
Okay. And I see that Ray's got a question. So what, okay.
I wanted to ask you, I noticed that this particular slide that's up right now is from the Washington Budget and Policy Center, and a number of the things, when I look through the legislative agenda, especially on the food issues and homelessness, and those are issues that mimicked a meeting they had a week or 2 ago. Are there other organizations that FAN is really aligned with that we don't see? They're not member organizations or you know, faith communities within FAN, but they're alignment organizations. And is there a list of those, and maybe the liaison or contact person with those organizations? I think sometimes getting information about a particular bill, or you know, a little fuller understanding from the organizations that have people that are, you know, they have the experts, and we draw on those, but we don't often know who we're really connecting to.
Thanks, Ray. So we will certainly be we will have a list of up on our advocacy website that are fact sheets that come from some of those organizations, so that some of their best work will get passed on to you directly. But we also work with a lot of coalitions, and I'd invite Elise to respond.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, but we work with more than 25 coalition partners in choosing and working towards our legislative agenda. So this year, for the first time, we specified on our annotated version of the legislative agenda our values, you know, just a hint towards what we're trying to accomplish. And we listed some of the people, groups that we work with on those issues. Ideally, we would love to fill out that website with links to our partner coalitions. We will definitely add the links to the fact sheets.
Thank you.
And at this point, what I'd like to do is just invite Kristen to close us out. Anyone who has more questions, I'm happy to stay on. Probably a couple other FAN staff would be happy to stay on too. So Kristen, I saw you enter at some point. Oops. Are you there?
I think she's gone.
I think she's gone. Okay. She's a busy person these days. So take a look at our policy priorities, find out, look to see what makes your heart sing in those. And please don't hesitate to call us or reach out to us if you have any more questions. Your advocacy is so important. We can make such a difference, and do some of those, very hard, far-reaching things that we have, we have worked on things for 10 years and then finally won. We can do this. We can really make a difference in equity and flourishing for all. So thank you for coming, and happy to answer any questions for those of you who still have them.